Welcome to Feminine Power Time. Turn off the chatter and tune in to what matters. This is Christine O'Reilly, your host, and today I welcome you to an episode that is very aligned with what we do here at Feminine Power Time, which is all about reimagining the way we in the world work from the inside out and embracing our power to actually be co-creators, using a blend of well-being and leadership and timeless wisdom modified for our modern times. One of the tools I love to use, I heavily rely on, is a tool called Evolutionary Astrology. And for those of you who are like, oh my God, this is so exciting, I can't wait, I want to dive into evolutionary astrology, I use it, or I love astrology. Or you're a person who's like, astrology, really, Christine? That's what we're going to talk about? I know what my sun sign is, and I read Vanity Fair magazine. Or maybe you're just somewhere in between. You're like, all right, whatever Christine wants to talk about is good with me. Wherever you're at on your spectrum of understanding, of embracing, of utilizing, I think would be the word I would say, evolutionary astrology. I want to invite you to come in today with an open mind, an open heart, a curiosity with this inquiry of, okay, what can this tool, evolutionary astrology, which to me is one of the top 4 systems that I work with in order to navigate these times and to stay clear and focused on my part, to stay harmonized and centered within, regardless of what is going on the outside. It's not that I'm not affected by it, but what evolutionary astrology does is it gives us a perspective, it gives us insight, it helps us understand the bigger cycles of time that we're in, both the meta, thousands and thousands of years of ages and eons, down to some of the smaller ones that might be 20 years or 5 years, to smaller ones even smaller than that, all the way down to the moon cycle. And so today I've invited a dear friend of mine for the annual episode I do at the beginning of every Lunar New Year, or around the beginning of every Lunar New Year, or the first full moon often of the new year, which is always called Wisdom for the Year Ahead. And today I invited my dear friend Shannon Gill. Shannon is a Jungian archetypal, I hate to say expert, but person who really gets archetypal energy. And she's also an evolutionary astrologer. She is my person who I go to look at my chart every year, as whenever it's my birthday, to really set the tone for the year ahead and to give me some insight that helps me focus my energy and work with the invisible energies that I can't see, but are there for me both to support me and give me superpower, but that could also sabotage me. So we're going to dive in today a little bit about what is evolutionary astrology, to give you some perspective on that, how to best use it. We're going to dive into the cycles, the big ones, the medium ones, the small ones. And we're also going to look at the elements, because the wisdom of the ages is when you know how to work with the elements and you choose to work with the elements will work with and for you. So that is where we're going. And so, yeah, I think without kind of further ado, I'm going to bring Shannon in here. I just want to give you one announcement before we start, is I'm really excited to announce that for the first time in many years, I am going to be having an in-person event. I've actually been invited to co-facilitate an event in Chicago live at a place called Alter Community. And it is on International Women's Day, well, the day before, on March 7th in Chicago, co-hosted with Gina Murata and Amy Galvin, who you're going to meet soon here, probably in February, in March on the podcast. We have some exciting things that are happening as we go into our 10th cycle on May 1st, but more on that. But I wanted to invite any of you that are near Chicago, in Chicago, to come. It's called When Women Lead, and really looking at what is it like when we lead from the feminine and how can we use that inside the systems, teams, energies, organizations we work in. And more to come on all of that, but come to my website, check it out, and would love to see you there. And for all of us, I want to invite you into this conversation with Shannon and I. Even though she and I are talking and having this conversation, you're right there with us. And to open yourself up to what wisdom wants to come through today for you that gives you some context that can help you kind of make sense of what's happening, so that you can navigate and walk through whatever's going to happen in the world this year, and also what can you do inside yourself to be able to stay centered and sustained using the power of evolutionary astrology. Without further ado, let's dive in, dear ones. So Shannon, welcome. It's so good to have you here with us for what we like to call Wise Woman Tea. And I'm loving that we're actually having this conversation, that we're inviting everyone that's tuned in here right now. You're invited in, pull up your chair, have some tea. Shannon has some, I have some. That we're actually taping this on the quarter moon. So that quarter moon waning is connected to the archetype of the wise woman. And she's all about simplifying. Feels so good. And attuning in. And so I'm just excited to be on the moon cycle in the energy for what we're about to dive in together. So I just wanted to say thank you for being on the planet. I already know how glorious and amazing and fabulous you are because I've had the pleasure of knowing you for multiple years, and you are one of you. As in addition to being a friend, you are also a dear friend and soul sister. You are also the person who I trust to help me interpret the stars and the planets for myself. And so I'm excited to have us maybe start today with a little understanding from your perspective around evolutionary astrology. Oftentimes I'm speaking with people, and either when I talk about astrology, they look at me like, or they're like, "Oh, I love astrology. I'm a Leo," and then I say, "Oh, okay. Well, saying you're Leo is like saying I have brown hair and you have blonde hair, but that's nice. So there's some more, and let me share with you about evolutionary astrology. And you've been one of the teachers to me, and I think I found it maybe 5, 6 years ago. After being connected to astrology for 20 years, it just came across my path, in the last decade. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit, both about maybe your journey and how evolutionary astrology found you, and then give us some insight into what evolutionary astrology is, and then we'll kind of go from there. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Thank you, Christine. I'm so honored to be here with you. I have admired you from afar for many years before we actually started working together because you have worked with many sisters and mutual clients that have come to me, and your name was always sort of popping up into the awareness. And so I'm really honored to be here. Hello, women. And I love.
Conscious men. We have men, and we
Awesome.
yeah, everybody gets to come because it's
Oh,
all about
good.
the feminine. And since, as you well
Ah.
well know, we all have the feminine within us. So
So true. I love that. Yeah. So welcome humanity family. I love that you started with, noting the moon phase, and just to add to that, that the moon is in Scorpio today. So this is the time of the lunar cycle where we get to go deep. And I think if we're going to be talking about 2025, the year of the snake, then it's possible that we're going to get into some underworld terrain. But just to address your question, you know, astrology, I guess, sort of found me. I feel like I've probably been in some way or another a mystic for many lifetimes. And in this particular lifetime, my chart, my soul blueprint is such that I was going to learn the ways of the underworld and truly what alchemy is through my own life circumstance, which sort of threw me into a lot of chaos as a young person, a lot of dealing, just like we all have our traumas, early death of my father, watching all of his amazing gay friends die of AIDS in the 80s when I was 14, my mother very sick with addiction, embezzlement of my trust fund, et cetera, on and on. And all of those experiences, I now understand, were deep initiations into the wise woman that I feel that I am today by understanding, the path of evolution through the connection between the light and the dark, the connection between the shadow and the light. And astrology was something I was interested in as a young person. I had my spiritual awakening in my 20s, early 20s, standing in the Guadalupe River at my cabin. And it sort of set me on a path of healing myself, really. And it was a long meandering path, but I didn't have my first official astrology reading till my 30th birthday, actually.
mm,
I had already gotten a degree in Buddhist psychology, dance, music, and art therapy was my focus. And, I'd always been an enthusiast of astrology, but every time someone would look at my chart, they would gasp because I have 5 planets in the eighth house of Scorpio.
Oh my.
And, so if you know something about, astrology, or even, not much, Scorpio is known as like the most intense sign and has to do with death and all these things. And so I kind of had this fear of my life, of my chart. And as I mentioned, my life had already been so intense. And so, my very first official professional astrology reading on my 30th birthday, my soon to be teacher, he was the founder of the Archetypal Academy in Boulder, Dr. Charles Bibeau, looked at my chart and he said, "Wow, you have so much power to help other people transform."
Mm.
And so he was able to reconceptualize for me, contextualize all the intensity that I had been through, all the dark nights of the soul into my power. And that every time I had some really intense trauma or loss or betrayal happen to me, it actually was an integral part of my awakening.
Mm.
The Rumi famous quote, "The wound is where the light comes in." So I ended up entering into a journey of professional astrology training. First, I was trained in archetypal astrology, which I love, Jungian astrology. I'm a Jungian counselor as well, working with the archetypes of the universe, really understanding that we're all sort of fractals of the one consciousness in different displays, in different percentages. And then I met my next love, an astrology teacher who was the founder of the Evolutionary Astrology School. And that really was something that resonated on such a deep soul level that I knew that that was going to be my next journey. And basically, evolutionary astrology, there's many systems of astrology. Evolutionary astrology is looking at the evolution of the soul through multiple lifetimes, both the personal soul and the collective soul, and understanding that there's an intersection of the two, that we are actually the micro of the macro. So in this system, we're able to look at the journey of your soul through many lifetimes. So it's with the understanding that we're eternal and that we are on this mysterious evolutionary journey of awakening. And along the way, we accrue karma or our baggage. And in the chart, I'm able to see the archetypal imprint of what those patterns are that we're here to unlock, to heal. Or sometimes our karma from the past is actually not activating our greatest potential. And so the karma is to get out of our own way. And so in the chart, I can see the karma that the soul brings with, but I can also see the dharma, which is the spiritual
Mm.
contract. It's what our higher self has set out in motion for us. So for me, there's nothing that's more valuable than this map, because it truly is the map of the evolution of our soul.
Oh, I'm going to take a nice exhale. I felt like you just sang a song for us. Well, first, I just want to honor the path that you've been on. I know that those initiations don't come without a lot of stress and stretch and tension and tempers us all for the good. But I feel like one of the things that's true about the feminine and feminine power is actually acknowledging that evolution that happens on the inside. And so thank you for doing that work, because that's what allows you to be the presence that you are today. And that's true for any of us that are here right now. And I love that if we just took those two words, evolutionary astrology, it kind of like says it for itself, right? And then that it is about giving us a map for evolution, and also just pink underlining for everybody. This is the way our conversation is going to go today. And why I love evolutionary astrology so much is that it helps us see what you said, the macro and the micro, we're not separate. So, when I'm looking around at what goes on in our world, whether I'm watching an election or I'm watching I call them weather disasters instead of natural disasters, because I don't think that they're natural. I think lots of other things. So weather disasters, I can see the meta that's happening. Because I understand in many ways through this tool of evolutionary astrology and other things, I can see the meta, and so it helps me. It gives me some solace, and it gives me some understanding, as I that without that understanding, I would just be completely freaked out. Like, I don't even know why we would go through these times without this tool of evolutionary astrology, because I can see that happening. So I feel like I'm kind of tapped into the divinity of what's happening, that the universe is really moving us into the next stage of order and evolving. We have to go through the chaos often to get there. But at the same time, it allows me to keep humanity, like with myself and with others. And so that I can have empathy for myself and others as we're all going through our own micro part of it. Right. And I've certainly been feeling it the last 2 weeks. I'm like, oh man, it is hot. I feel like the phoenix who's like part in his one wing in one wing in the ashes and the other wing out. But I'm like, okay, this is happening at a macro level and also at a micro level. So as we go into today, one of the questions that came up as I was going to pour the tea before we had our conversation, everyone, was, what does all this mean? So Shannon is going to help us give us some language to what does it mean? Like, if we look at the year ahead, and likely not just the year, because we're going to talk next about cycles. We're looking at bigger cycles than just the 1 year, which we talk about that a lot here. Shannon I'll allude to like the 20-year Aquarius, Pluto, and I'll like just touch on it. I'm just touching on these things. And then we bring you in, who's been studying this for way longer, than I have. But we'll talk about some of those bigger cycles. And then also just looking kind of elementally this year, how can we break that down? So it's like, what does all of it mean? And then who do we want to be? Or how do we be in it? And what can we expect? Almost like we're seeing the map as best we can of what's energetically here, so we can have some strategies of how we're going to be in it, knowing we can't plan for it all, but we can be aware as we're going through it. And so I'm wondering if we just go ahead and move right into the cycles, and then what we can do is I wanted you to also just share a little bit about the difference between, my sun sign this and this, but we'll end there, because I think also that'll be a good way to we're going to kind of play in the meta, and then how do we be in the meta, and then we can kind of end in, now we can start to take it personal, and that would be a nice astrology way to complete. How does that sound?
I love it. I'm in your hands, wherever you'd like to take it.
Okay. All right, you all. So we're going to head into the cycles. And so thinking about evolution and how we evolve in cycles of time, maybe share a little bit about how we can think about these cycles in general from an evolutionary astrology perspective, but also I think specifically then kind of focusing in on this Aquarius Pluto shift that we've moved into. I know there are many other cycles that are happening and all kinds of fascinating things are going on, but I thought that might be a good place to start, because most people, I think, are, even if you're not into astrology, you're deeply steeped in it. We've all heard of the age of Aquarius, which in the dawning of the age of Aquarius, which we played at my wedding, and it was lots of fun. And we did a little tango train around me, because I have an Aquarius sun. And that was the late 60s. And then here we are now in the whatever, we're in the 2020s. And so both the Pluto, you could decide which way you want to start, the Aquarius, Pluto, Aquarius in general, but also I know there's a bigger cycle that's happening in terms of how we are like being midwifed into this next era. So that's an even bigger. So you can start the smaller one with the Aquarius Pluto, or you can start the bigger one with this more meta of how we're literally shifting ages.
Okay. Well, I'll just dive right in then. And I always like to start with the macro, the wider brushstroke. Astrology is a history of cycles. We understand that there's cycles within cycles within cycles. The sun comes up and the sun comes down, right? We have the lunar cycle, and then it goes out from there. But from my point of view, it is invaluable to understand, and it's almost inconceivable to understand the magnitude of this moment on planet Earth in evolutionary history, because This is the prophesized time of all the ancient texts of the apocalypse, right? And that's a very loaded word, but I know that we're all etymologists, or at least unpack things. This is the time of the revelation. It just means the time of the great revealing. And what that means is that it is the end of the age. So you've already alluded to that several times. The astrological ages are connected to a cycle of 24,000 years. Okay. Humanity has fallen asleep and woken up over and over since the beginning of time. So this is considered the dark ages and the light ages and the iron age and the golden age and the yuga cycles, the Kali yuga. So every culture has a languaging for these longer cycles. So the precession of the equinox is what is called what is the cycle of all of the astrological ages, divided by 12 makes 12 separate astrological ages. Okay. So that means that every 2,160 years, we shift from one age to another. And the astrological ages depict the collective consciousness of that period. So everything from political, environmental, religious, social is wrapped up in that archetypal energy of that age. And whenever we get to a cusp, which is where we have been, it is typical that it is very chaotic, that there's world wars, that there's pandemics, that there's natural disasters or unnatural disasters. And so, like you said so beautifully, understanding that there is an organic higher orchestration of things helps us to trust the process. And to take that even further, to understand how alchemy actually works, to change from one substance to another, or to understand that astrology simply reflects nature. And I've been telling my children since they were very small, you can't have summer all year. We have to go through the winter, right? And so we understand that nature dies, the leaves wither, they go into the underworld of the compost of winter, and they're reborn in the spring. Well, we do this in all types of ways. We do this on a soul level personally. We do this on a collective level. We're doing this on an astrological age level now. And so, a lot of people want to say, well, when exactly did the Aquarian age start? And that's really, there's a lot of conjecture about that, basically, because the cusp itself, because we're talking about 2,000 plus years long, could very well be 50 or 100 years. But if you understand the archetypes and you understand how to decipher metaphor and codes, this is what unlocks the mysteries of the universe. So we're leaving the Pisces age. The Pisces is the glyph of the fish, the two fish swimming in opposite directions. In simplicity, it was the age of duality, and also, yes, the dark ages, where humanity was asleep to our unitive consciousness, that there was an illusion of a separation between matter and spirit. And of course, if we feel like we're separate from source, then we're more easily dictated and controlled. There was a very strong narrative and program that we were powerless and that we had to be overseen by the powers that be, whether it was the church or the doctor or, the government, right? A very hierarchical paradigm with the divine feminine pushed underground, literally written out of the Bible. You know the story, right? Well, hallelujah, all of that's over. And so now we're at the birth canal. And, a lot of us light workers have been talking about this for decades, this shift. Like I literally bought our domain name, the Shift Foundation, 15 years ago, knowing that this moment was coming. Well, this moment is, again, it's a cusp. However, I see it as, it's like being pregnant. It's like, seems like it takes forever towards the end. And then the last few years, 2020 is like, we're there, we're finally there. Not quite yet. And so it's been this like, sort of like Braxton Hicks, and, we've got our bag packed. We're ready to go to the hospital, unless you do home birth, of course. anyway, for me, it really feels like 2025 is very likely going to be the baby is shot through the birth canal. And but before we go into anything about that, I just want to sort of like complete the shift, right? The great shift out of Pisces, out of the divisive illusion of separation, and into the Aquarian paradigm, which we are the pioneers and we are the midwives. We are the way showers. And I really want to emphasize that because we're still trying to wake up out of that mind control that we're powerless. And actually, we have more power than we realize, which means we have a responsibility to create the new world with our beliefs, our consciousness, our focus, and our actions. And this new world, this new Aquarian paradigm, I like to call organismic consciousness, where we remember ourselves as all one organism, each of us organs of the organism. And when each of us is giving our part, which is our personal gift, what lights us up, how we shine, then the organism will flow beautifully, organically, efficiently, and we're going to transform every system of our world. So we have our work cut out for us. In a lot of ways, I see us as farmers planting seeds for the future, knowing that it's a 2,000-year journey ahead. And we are definitely dealing with this battle in a way of the light and the dark and the shadow of Aquarius. And that is this razor's edge that we find ourselves at, that we think that we're all sort of like, oh my gosh, what next? We're really being asked to do the master's level work.
Yeah. Well, good segue, the master's level work. Because when you say that, one of the things I've noticed, just in the last couple of weeks, is how when I think of the master's work, I think of the alchemy that has to happen on the inside, within here. So you all know this because we talk about this all the time, Shannon, and Feminine Power Time. Like basically one of our tenets is it's like, if we want the world out there to be different, we have to start with the world that's in here. And then we look around our relationships, and then we look around the ecosystems of our families or our teams, and then we go to our organizations and everything, kind of out from there versus like, I'm going to go out into the world and, save the day. And I feel very grateful that I've had 20 plus years to do this alchemy work on the inside. And for everyone here listening, there's a different, like many people here have had what my teacher once called a long runway to do the alchemy. And some people have not been doing that, and they're waking up and, that their systems are not able to go through this kind of a transition. I was just thanking my whatever guides that sent me to Kundalini yoga and started me on the yogic path 20 years ago, because I have all these tools. And even I'm having to I'm like, I got to double dip and double down. I'm going to a pranayama workshop this weekend, and I've been studying pranayama for 20 years because I need some more of this, and I need someone to hold space for me. And what I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, especially, this power thing is very present, even for people who think that we're really empowered. And I've seen it in all of my clients coming to some kind of edge with feeling either like you find ourselves in a situation in which we feel like the power to do something is being taken away, or that someone has power over me, and on the flip side, I've also seen people feeling like I don't have the places where they haven't felt empowered to move into action. And then we have, for a little lightness, you all, I am called number 47. I number the presidents of the United States, the heat miser. And we'll talk about the elements of fire and air next. But we have this piece is like, I can't control this. I can't do anything. I can't do anything about this. And it feels unsettling, right, to us at a macro level. So I've not purposely tuned into that collective energy field, because I've been focused on my own field that is mirroring that field. And then what's coming up are these ways in which I'm feeling like that someone could take the power away or could have control over me in some way, but I'm able to link it to that macro. Does that make sense, you all? Like what I'm saying and kind of inviting us like almost into is like in when I've been talking to my different clients, individual leadership clients this week, they're all amazing, powerful women. Like they're super empowered. Like they don't, if I was to say this to them, would you like me to empower you? They would probably punch me in the nose. I mean, they wouldn't really punch me in the nose because I don't believe you can empower anyone. But they've all been rocked in different ways. And so there's this, and I'd be curious about your experience, Shannon, because you talked to so many people in doing your one-on-one work with individuals of how it's kind of this piece of like, what does this mean and how do we be? And so there's definitely this power thing, disempowerment, empowered thing that's happening. And for me, being able to understand the meta that's happening and then seeing, oh, wow, this is how this is showing up for me. And then I had to remind myself, like I had to let myself sit. Well, I chose to let myself sit in it for a day and feel the feels and let the alchemy happen. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, I'm a co-creator. I'm a pioneer. Like I'm a magician. Like I have these tools. No one has power over me. But then being able to relate it to this brought a lot of compassion too. So I'm curious what you're noticing or seeing, or how that might play into how we can be, in this time as we go through this birth canal thing that's going to be messy because birth is.
Yes, birth is, and it's painful and it's nonlinear and it's absolutely glorious and organic, right? There's something about surrendering, and which is definitely a highlighted theme for 2025, being that it's also the year of the snake. It's a 9-year. We have a lot of the outer planets hovering over the last degree of the zodiac. So we're in a transition. You said you spoke about power quite a lot there, and what I see and hear and feel when you're talking is the planet Pluto. Pluto is the planet that rules power. It is the planet that rules Scorpio. It's the planet that rules empowerment and powerlessness. It's the journey to power. And it is also the planet that rules evolution of the soul through that process of death and rebirth. Scorpio is also represented by the snake. What is the snake constantly doing? Surrendering, shedding. And Pluto has now made its final entry into Aquarius, as you have talked about quite a bit, which is the last of the outer planets to enter Aquarius. So I think we can all like celebrate. We're actually really here. We're actually full in now. And so basically this is sort of the way astrology works. You take the energy of the planet and then you put it with the energy of the sign. It's kind of like a mathematical sentence. It's like transformation Pluto of Aquarius, which is humanity. And so we are going through a radical, revolutionary, volatile transformation that we're emerging into terrain that no one has seen before. We're evolving into higher and higher frequencies that are beyond human consciousness, actually, into non-human realms, right? And so Pluto, as it's making this entry into Aquarius at the beginning of this year, is doing this 3-month opposition with Mars. And just to know that Mars is our direction. It's our intention to will things into being. And so basically, and Mars is retrograde right now. So it's like everybody's feeling a little bit of frustration and impatience and like futility, like nothing is moving. And there's a lot of like internalized agitation, and that fire of the planet Mars inverted can feel very contentious, defensive, reactive. and just kind of like wanting to get on with things. And Pluto is in opposition, saying you're going to have to transform your relationship to power. You're going to have to transform your relationship to your forward trajectory. And here we are, like it or not, with, this new reality, whether it's has something to do with the political atmosphere or not. Really, I feel like the invitation is to glean our perspective from a higher place, more like the hawk. Scorpio is the snake, but it's also the eagle or the hawk. And it's like whenever we face our fears or when we face our shadows or we move our toxicity and we shed that skin, that phoenix flies from the ashes out of the underworld into this higher vantage point of awareness where we become more like a witness. We become more like an objective, a watcher, where we're not so emotionally attached and flung around by the third dimensional narrative. And I know that's easier said than done, but this is where we're headed. This is what we're being asked. This is what this master's level work is coming out of the Pisces age, which is water, which is very much about unconscious emotions. It's also the victimization program, into Aquarius, which is higher mind, which is way beyond all of the stories, the duality, the political system, all of that. And so we're being asked to stretch into some new terrain in our own consciousness and to get out of the stories, to get out of the division. So long as we're pointing the finger and thinking that something outside is causing us upset or justifying our emotions, we're actually participating in the very the very wound of separation that we're trying to heal. And so I understand that it's different for everyone, but this is the work that we're being really asked to do. But we're in a transition year, and with everything so chaotic, like every day you turn on the news and something else happening, we are going to have to increase our tools. We're going to have to lean on each other, and we're going to really have to, in a lot of ways, I think, keep it a little more simple. And another larger theme for 2025 in the tarot deck, it's the year of the Hermit. It's the Hermit card, which is all about turning inward and getting your guidance from within. Because if we're constantly taking in all the feedback that is just being forced down our throats first of all, you can't even believe what you see on TV. Okay. So we might as well stop looking for some kind of clear validation from the outside and really start to glean it from the inside. And I think that that's where the true power and the true empowerment is going to be coming from.
Mm. Hey, everyone, take a little breath over there. Click your heels 3 times, like Dorothy, who reminds herself that the power was within me all along. One of my favorite words, you all know this here on the podcast. I know you love. I think you love this word too. Is co-creation. And I'm curious, look through the eyes of Aquarius. I want to break out into song about the age of Aquarius, but I'm not going to, because that would not be pleasing to anyone's ears. There are 2 themes that feel important to mention, and then we'll kind of go into the systems and elements. One is that, and correct me if I'm incorrect here, is that Aquarius rules technology. And also Aquarius, people often think Aquarius is a water sign because they think of the water bearer, but it's actually not a water sign. It's an air sign. Although I do love that it has the water. I think that's kind of fascinating. I don't know exactly what that means, but maybe you'll tell us. And also that it, my North Node. So we're not going to go into North Nodes, but if you don't know about your North and South Node, you should definitely know about them because they're some of the most important ways of understanding your evolutionary. They're not skin tags. They're called your South and North Node. Is in Aquarius. My sun is there. My North Node is there. And I remember many, many moons ago, and not an evolutionary astrologer, but a friend of mine who's a Western astrologer said that basically that I needed to focus my energy on humanitarian, like come from a humanitarian perspective. That if I was only focused on my own career, my own growth, and kind of me, it wasn't going to work. And I did try that model as an author, very short period of time, very painful, lots of struggle. And so I firmly embraced the humanitarianism, and it's really guided my life for 20 years of the books that I write and these social questions I have that I kind of dive myself into, Scorpio moon and Scorpio rising, to go into the depths. And there's this piece about the collective and the humanitarianism that feels like almost like you're talking about, like every energy archetype. Aquarius would be one, or Pluto. They have a shadow and they have light, and so I'm curious because like when I look at the thing that goes scary, scary, I look at technology and I'm like, oh my God, they don't know what they're doing. They're going to recreate Atlantis and blow up the entire planet again, or I don't know what they're going to do, but they're just going to get in their rocket ships and leave anyway. So, but this technology that has so much power that not used for humanitarian purposes, but used for selfish or short-sightedness could really be bad. And also then the light side of this potential of like how can we come around things as a collective where we can have differences and we can be different, but we come around like we have the power to create this beautiful world if we can dream from that higher mind of what's possible. I know that's not really a question, so I'm just going to put that in the center and see what comes out of your magical self. That might help give us like a way to be what looks scary, and a
Yes.
way to also understand that as we're moving out of this Piscean energy of like, there's the guru, there's the patriarch, there's the person who can tell you what to do, that we're actually, it's a much more of a collective and our own internal guidance that are working together to guide us.
Exactly. I mean, you said that very beautifully. As an Aquarius, you are an ambassador of the new age. To go back to your primary question around the water bearer, and how that pertains to Aquarius as an air sign, it is true. Aquarius is an air sign. It rules the mind. It rules the higher mind, meaning like enlightenment, like the God mind, like we have access to infinite knowledge, the Akashic record, seeing the future, basically that one mind consciousness that we talk about a lot. And the emergence of the Aquarian age paradigm coming out of the Pisces age, where we're in duality, right? And there's this massive separation and amnesia. In the Aquarian age, I always think about those two fish of Pisces swimming in opposite directions, turning and facing each other and recognizing each other in the mirror as fractals of the one God. So there's something about what Carl Jung calls the syzygy, the unification of duality. We talk about this sometimes in like sacred relationship workshops, the Heroes Gamos, the unification of duality creates an alchemical outpouring of the return of the sacred waters to the planet. And so it's the divine life force returning. And that is the woman at the well in the Bible. That is the implicit moment of the return of the Aquarian age, is whenever the waters return, the Holy Spirit, And so that's that, which is really, I think, important and beautiful. And I live in Wimberley, Texas, where we have Jacob's Well, which is really magical, which is what in the Bible, it was Jacob's Well where the woman was there with the urn, and that was the beginning of the age of awakening. We're all waking up. It is the time of the return of Christ. which is what it says in the Bible, but it's the return of Christ consciousness, right? Which is a biological activation of our innate circuitry where the chakras align, spark, spin, the pineal gland opens in the crown, which connects us to the one source. And this is the trajectory of the ascension process that we are all on. And you're right. There's a spectrum of light and shadow with every archetype. I recommend everybody knows what they are in their own charts. But we have definitely, in a lot of ways, entered into the Aquarius age in shadow. If we think about Aquarius being community, all of us, one harmonious family singing Kumbaya. Look at 2020 right out of the gates. The program was to fear each other, stay home, don't talk to your neighbor, don't connect, right? I mean, couldn't have been more opposite, which is this very shut off, cold, non-human energy, which is the shadow of Aquarius. You're right. It also rules technology. And the reason that is, if you think about the World Wide Web that connects all of us, it's the outer reflection of the truth, which is the collective consciousness that connects all of us. So man is always manifesting things on the outside to reflect back as we're waking up and remembering, like, oh, we're actually the supercomputer. Oh, okay, we can actually read minds. And yes, I would say that, there's a level of severe intensity around the misuse of technology. And like you said, we've been here before. I mean, in galactic history, it's either like the fifth or sixth incarnation of Earth. I definitely have been there at one of the falls, and I remember it in my bones. And I think that's why my life is so directed and committed to the Shift, which is the name of my nonprofit, the Shift Foundation, because I'm aware that we are at that cusp, we're at that moment, right? And I can't emphasize enough that the future is literally in our hands. And so it's really still very easy to think, well, what are they doing? They are doing what they want to do, but what are we doing? And so we are much more powerful. And the way that I understand technology is it's like money. It's neutral, depends on whose hands it's in. Therefore, we have a responsibility to program consciousness into technology and to have consciousness into the AI system to help actually, what I feel is give us our humanity back. Because I'm experiencing in my realm, in my work, in my community, some miraculous assistance from AI that is actually helping me to get my message out there more regularly. That's actually giving me more time to be with my family. And so I feel like we have to be very careful to stay out of fear. We have to stay aware. It's not like turning your head the other way, but not to throw the baby out with the bathwater either. To understand that technology is not going anywhere and that it actually can be here to help serve our evolution. And it may very well be the very thing that turns this whole ship around. So, yeah, I mean, it's never a dull moment on planet Earth at this time. And I agree with everything that you're saying. It is kind of scary, but whenever I tap into my soul and whenever I tap into that deeper part of my knowing, I am very clear that there is nothing to worry. There's nothing to fear because we're eternal. And I feel like we are in this time where we get instant feedback. Like, this is a different terrain than it was just a few years ago. I mean, instant karma and miracles in the moment whenever you're attuned to the frequency of source. And yeah, I feel like the way that reality is speeding up, where we're able to manifest with infinite potential, infinite support, infinite abundance in like real time, is confirmation to me that we've arrived in this higher dimensional state, this higher, I should say that we have access. I feel like we're popping in and out of it. We have like touch it and then we're like, oh, get like triggered by something, and like then you're back down in the hell realm for a few hours or a day, and then we know our tools. We know how to get us back up to that place of higher consciousness where everything's always pretty much great and okay if we're in that ever-present now moment. And if we stay in that space and we are working our magic, right, as co-creators to project that which we desire and not be focusing on what we fear, not be focusing on what quote unquote they might be cooking up, because when we're doing that, we're only feeding their agenda, right? So we just don't even look at it unless it's something we can see objectively. Otherwise, we're actually wasting our own creative potential. And again, as the awakened dreamers, we have the responsibility to dream the new world. And that takes a lot of focus, and that takes a lot of daily practice. And like you say, to amp up our daily rituals and the things that we need to do. And I would say that's definitely one of the suggestions I would have for this year is with the nodes now in Virgo Pisces, that attending to our day-to-day, our health, our energy, our spiritual practices, our water, very simple things, Virgo is going to help us to deal with Pisces, which is everything we can't control, the unknown. It's going to really, I think, bring us to an edge this year of how do we deal with the unknown. It's very existential.
Mm-hmm. It's well, it's also very practical. I love this. Another segue, you all. Okay. Red, I think, we're going to use red. Okay, we're going to use red for this underlining, stepping into the unknown. And I don't know anybody out there, if maybe you can raise your hand if you don't feel this, but I think everybody's like, I don't know. I can't really see. It's like this, like I can't really see. And it's the thing that I see in myself that we'll call it spin me out or tweak me out, or I call it sometimes getting the frequency bends, where I've dropped a frequency instead of like maintaining the frequency. And it very much is what I'm not being here right now, when I'm being in the future or projecting into the future, or I'm projecting into the past, the experience that I've had that looks like the experience that is now. And have to remind myself, this is a piece of wisdom that came through a couple years ago, of this is not that. This is not that. And it's coming back around again, maybe, and it may look like that, but I am at a different frequency. The world's at a different frequency. And it's actually a time almost like to go scrubby, scrubby, dub, dub. Like I'm going to scrub off that little like a charcoal, like a burnt marshmallow, where you're just like, I don't need that anymore. Like get off that yucky stuff off my marshmallow so I can be my wonderful, gooey, pure hearted self. And I think what you just said is important. So remember, you all, where we're at is, what does this mean and how do we be? Right. And so what I'm hearing you say, Shannon, is that, and this doesn't have to be scary, like this is like what we've never been here before. No one's been here before. And the nodes, so the nodes as I ever understand them personally, is that they show us in many ways our evolutionary path. And it's when the two of them are working together, more like a power spectrum, an infinity sign, than things that are pulling at each other, that we stay centered. Is that?
Yes, 100%. We find that fulcrum between the two.
Mm-hmm. So Virgo being that very practical earth, daily routine, just what am I doing every day in the here and now? And then you're saying the Pisces, which is spiritual, like not in form, water-y. And we actually need to be in both places, right? We need both. It's interesting now that we're talking, if Pisces is water and Virgo is earth, and I think this is right about the elements. So this will be the third part of our conversation here, that the elements are air and fire right now. Is that right?
Actually, we're going to be shifting out of earth and water this year into more air and fire a little bit later into the spring. But you're right, the nodes are going to stay in earth and water, but we're talking more about the planets, and the nodes are points in space. It's a little more obscure.
So would it be fair to say, one of the things I love about the elements and working with the elements, so like how do we be and what does this mean, is that if we know that the elements, if you like, so for example, look at air and fire, which I think like the fires that happened in Los Angeles, that's an example of air and fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
100%, yes. And it's very fast. Air and fire is very quick. Like the we think that things have been speeding up. Wait till we get till mid-year when Uranus enters into Gemini. And it's also very creative. Fire is creation and spirit, and air is navigation, mind, consciousness. And so we're coming out of sort of the mud in a way of the last few years, where there's been a lot of emotionality, there's been a lot of intensity, in so many ways. And now we're again, I feel like going to be like shot through the birth now into, oh my Lord, we've actually fully arrived. And I kind of have my eye on 2027 as far as this, like, as Richard read, this shift into this final mutation of the collective evolution going from victimization into freedom. And so I feel like we're all at our edge this year of how do we deal with, discomfort, lack of security, lack of clarity, and endings. And so, this is this real initiation, I feel like, for all of us to do our own part in that.
So based on that, if you were to say these are like 5 things that we should just expect with these elements of air and fire that are the planets are, all the things that we've been talking about. And I love that you just said, like, so air, like all the elements have a potential, we could call it shadow and potential gift. Or then we might desire more. Like, ooh, creativity, that sounds amazing. Yes. But then fire also burns things down.
Yes.
And I think this is one of my inquiries too. Like there's different ways to burn things down. There's different ways to change, like the systems are changing. We've known that. Most of us have been talking about this for 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, goes way like this. We've known this. And there's some you can burn it down, like in the Phoenix, where she just burns it all down and then she has to go through the ashes and start anew. Although she retains her wisdom, which is good. There are ways where you can choose to release parts of it, like a controlled burn, like a controlled burn, and that has more intention to it, and not everything has to be devastated. And then I was also thinking about, fire and air as well, when the elements of earth and water are also present. So if it's interesting to me that the nodes would be in air and water signs, even though the main energy is air and fire, that slowing down, not speeding up, right? So if air and fire makes things go faster, if we do things to slow down within what's happening at the microcosm, not to be stagnant, but like going to do pranayama, doing your daily tasks. I'm just going to clean my bathroom today. Like just, very simple things, or just like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm just going to come back to the present moment. Or maybe it's a time for people who are maybe more used to holding on to ground, doing things that help them lighten up a bit. And people who are maybe more have been, off into the future, just being in the present. So working with the elements in that way.
Agreed. I mean, there's a shadow, of course, and a light for both aspects of that polarity of Virgo Pisces. Some people need to get out of the minutia and out of the like cleaning the house and the closets and then weeding. And need to open up to the vast universe. Need to clock out from all the to-do list. Go lay in the grass, right? Turn on some music. There's a real potential for a lot of beautiful spiritual upgrades and spiritual openings with the North Node. The North Node is our collective North Star, is Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac, which is about union with Source. It's about union with the divine. I think we're going to see a lot of people coming really online with their psychic gifts even more. So if you're someone that feels things and senses things, all we have to do is just open and receive those things and say, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to receive or to surrender to, the expanse of my capacity. There's going to be a lot of creativity that's going to come through that Pisces energy. And yes, there'll be a lot of people overwhelmed as well and can't deal with the unknown and can't deal with so much change, and that they might want to escape. And that's also a shadow of Pisces, is addiction and checking out and not being able to function. So if you can see, if you lean on one side or the other of the pendulum, if you start feeling like you're getting off into the shadow, you lean into and you integrate the opposite. So it's that, chop wood, carry water. Like, don't worry about all the things you can't control, right? It's like fear versus trust. And, the fires, we have, Pluto entered into Aquarius this past year, and we have all 4 other outer planets changing signs this year. That is very rare to all change signs in the same year. The outer planets are the transpersonal planets, meaning they affect us collectively. The inner planets are more personal. They move much more fast. So when the outer planets that take 164 years to go around, 248 years to go around, enter a new sign, massive shift. Even one changing signs is massive. So this is where you're like, what? All 5 planets shifting into new signs? And 2 of them moving from that last sign of Pisces into the first sign of Aries, which is the birth, the beginning. But it's also potentially the shadow of Aries, the warrior, is war. And 3 of the outer planets shifting into new signs, these signs this year, historically, when that's happened before, it's been the beginning of World War II, Civil War. So there's definitely some of the type of fire on the planet that we would not wish upon us. I feel like, again, in situations like that, when we're hearing wars and rumors of wars, right? We use our mind and our consciousness to imagine another outcome. Or I have a practice where I do like Tonglen, where I send love and compassion into the hearts of the leaders that have the capacity to make a good or a poor decision, to help seeing them in their innocence, to remember if we're all one organism, that we want that awakening to come from within. Instead of pointing the finger and projecting evil onto them, we're only upholding something that we don't want to see. We have to find the innocence in every person on the planet. Otherwise, we're simply working against ourselves. And this is, again, the master's level work. But like you said, breath work, like the inner fire, is definitely something that I would say to move the heat out of the body. Exercise is going to be really important. There's definitely going to be more with the air signs, more information overload. Air is the mind. And so again, like you said, and like the tarot card, it's like, you know what, enough stimulus going within. And that hermit card is really about having that refuge, having that place of salvation inside with your family, slowing down, like you. So you said that so beautifully.
Mm. When the world speeds up, the wise ones slow down.
I like that.
And you gave us a great nugget. I just want to make sure everyone heard this, to note that nodal piece of Pisces and Virgo. So if you're feeling that whatever the addiction is, whatever I want to check out, the kind of Pisces spiritually bypass or overwhelm in whatever way, lean into the Virgo energy of what can I just do today? The chop wood, carry water. I did that on Monday. I was like, I am going to go through all of the blogs I've ever written, and I'm going to save one for every year pre 2020 and unpublish all the rest of them. And it was like a meditation. It was lovely to like look back and feel all that I had already done. So a friend of mine's actually like, that's just such a waste of time. I thought you want to focus on like what's ahead. I'm like, Mars is in retrograde. And today I am going to focus on doing this. And this feels really, really good. It's not time for me. I'm like, it's still out there, in this piece of like, just be here now. Just be here now. And then Noah, my partner, is the opposite. He's like all in the details and he'll just get stuck bookkeeping for the rest of his life if, he doesn't allow himself to open up into the more to the Pisces part of the spiritual and all of that. So I
And he
just
has
want to,
his North Node in Pisces, if I remember correctly.
he
So he'll
does.
be having his nodal return, which happens only once every 18 years. So it's a very big karmic time for him.
You tell him that when he has his reading this year. I know that you've actually been really helpful with him, Shannon, and helping him step into, he moves too slow, I move too fast. And when we are out of balance, so we help each other. And so I slow down, he go faster. That's how it
Love it.
works. Yeah. So as we're kind of wrapping up today, how can individuals, so I'm going to put Shannon's information into the show notes. You can also let them know what your URL is. I refer all of my people that are open to receiving astrology, all my friends, all my clients, all my people, to Shannon because I trust you. I trust you implicitly. I don't let just anyone look at my chart and tell me what they see and what they think, because that's a precious thing, to allow someone to see those things about you and open yourself up to receive what those are. And you do it in a way of a lot of integrity, because you're not saying this is how it is, this is what I see. And then I will I will get the recording from you, and then I'll let it all seep in, and then I'll go back 3 weeks later and I'll watch it again, and then I'll take notes, and then Noah and I will watch it together, and he'll say what he sees and I'll say what I see in his. And I'm gonna, just coming up on my every year for my birthday, I have a solar return chart done. It just helps give me some context and some language and words. So I want to thank you, Shannon, for spending the time and the energy to decode this this deep wisdom tradition. I know enough I'm very intuitive. I can look at a chart and I can figure out enough, I say, to be dangerous. And so I'm like, someone say, well, what do you see? I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I'll go see Shannon because I don't really, this is beyond my grade. I'm like high school. And so I just know how deep that study is, to have, and all the things you mentioned, the Buddha, God, the many, many wisdom modalities. And so what is the best website for them to all go to, just so they can hear it in the recording? And then if someone was to say like, okay, like what would I want to focus on in my own astrology understanding, where it's not just like, oh, I'm a Leo, but there's this moon thing and there's a rising or their nodes, like what would be the two or three things you would say, this is where whether you work with me or you work with any astrologer, like these are the two or three things that you would want to explore that could give you the most value.
Yes. So I always start my sessions by doing the archetypal profile, which is the placement of the sun, your masculine essence, the moon, your feminine essence, and the ascendant, which is sort of like your engine or your driver. And we call that the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, the three. And the archetypal profile is kind of like the clothes you're wearing in this life. Every archetype has a very specific purpose on a soul level and a spectrum of light and shadow. And so I see the archetypal profile as like your mythical journey. And that's why I love working with archetypes, because it sort of helps us to depersonalize our stories and our complexes and our wounds, and tap us into this more expansive mythical journey that we are on. So the three, the sun, the moon, the ascendant, which are the Trinity. And then the nodal axis, which you've talked about a lot, is the destiny line. And that tells me who you are on a soul level. So yeah, you might be an Aquarius in this life, but in your next life, you might be a Scorpio, Well, there's the unchanging part of us, which is our soul. And that is represented by the nodal axis, which is more easily remembered as the destiny line, and tells us about the story of your soul's evolution through many lifetimes and your spiritual contract or your dharma for this lifetime. I also look at Chiron, the wounded healer, to show me where might some be of the blocks, what's in the way, why do we keep bumping our head against the same old thing? And whenever we unlock these particular little areas of our life, then we have more ease, flow, and coherence in our evolutionary trajectory. So it's really simple. And I actually teach a course for people to understand how to be able to identify the ruling archetypes. So you learn the 12 archetypes, and then you learn about the nodal axis and Chiron. And I'm starting another series in March, actually, around the week after the spring equinox. So it's 12 weeks. It's once a week on Wednesday. It's small pods. And it's for people. I really am a firm believer that you don't have to study forever. You don't have to be an astrologer. But, at one time in history, everybody lived and breathed by the stars, and it went underground in the dark ages because we couldn't be so easily controlled if we had direct knowledge access to knowledge. And so this is one of the beautiful things, many things that's arising in this time of the revealing, which is our astrology, which is our language and our guidance system. So yes, so you can find me on my website for personal readings, or if you're interested in the class, that's also on there. And my website is Shannon Lee Gill, LEIGILL.com. And yes, I would say that we are a symphony of energies, much more than just our sun sign. Sun sign is very important, but we're much more dynamic than that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Oh, all right. Well, everyone, take a deep breath. And I want to say thank you, Shannon, again. And thank you to all of you for being here today. I feel like what today's wisdom tea was really about is just opening the door. And I feel like astrology, especially evolutionary astrology and archetypes, I don't think I'll never stop learning from it. And that's the sign of a true wisdom technology. And evolutionary astrology, along with the gene keys and the Enneagram and human design, I think if those are like the four. If you know those four systems, why do you need anything else? And so thank you for opening the door and bringing some understanding to it. And I'm just wondering if there was one of the things that one of my favorite mystics, John O'Donohue, talks about is thresholds. And crossing thresholds is like moving a whole zip code into like a different territory. And what you're describing as a collective threshold shift that we're in. And one of the things that John O'Donohue said is that when you're in a threshold shift, very dangerous time for different reasons, also could be glorious, but you need more support and structure, and you also need blessings. So if there was a blessing that we could end with today, as you mentioned, what your practice of Tonglen of sending that love and light and higher consciousness to people in decision making, I have a blessing of my own that I'll add in that I've been saying out loud, and anyone who will listen. And so maybe we could end in that blessing. And for any of you that are listening, even though we can't hear you, the way a blessing works is you just say, may, da 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 da. And anything that comes after the words may is a blessing. And we have that power to bring and pull that blessing, which to me feels like we're inviting grace into the space. So I didn't prep you with this, but I'm sure you probably have one in there. So everybody, I encourage you to choose your own, and then Shannon's going to say hers, and then I'll say mine, and then we will complete until next time. For ourselves, everyone here, and also for all of humanity and the planet.
Oh, am I going first?
You go first.
All right. Yes. So I will just say, may we all remember who we truly are. And in that, remember that we chose to be here at this most auspicious moment in evolutionary history, in eras, in epochs of time behind. May we remember that we have our ancestors standing behind us, and we have the angels before us. And may we remember that we can call upon our light family, any of the star beings that we may work with, that we have way more support than maybe we realize, and that they are there to help us. And may we remember that it is our birthright to return to the garden, to return to that place of innocence, of love, of beauty, of equality, of sustainability. And through our remembrance of our heart, may we visualize that into being. Oh.
Oh. And I'll add a punctuation mark of may the human heart awaken. May the human heart awaken. All right, dear ones, sending you off with lots of love and lots of blessings. And remember, we're all flying through the shift together. And we'll see you next time here at Feminine Power Time. Much love, everyone.
Much love.